Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes. We are back with a talk video, and today we finally have Paz Vizsla joining the game. I'm very happy about this. I've been wanting him for a very long time. So we got our kit reveal, developer insights, breakdown analysis. We'll even look at the gear. This one though, probably a little shorter. We're not going to do any synergy look because this clearly has a future intended team, and we'll look at those synergies when those future characters are released. Paz joins the game as a light side Mandalorian tank, which finally fills in a key Mandalorian need. Back when Bo-Katan was released, I did a bunch of Mandalorian testing, and that is what I felt like the team was missing. These kinds of mechanics that we are seeing here with Paz. Now, as we get through to the attributes, the inspiration, and the tips, what CG informs us is he's going to be resilient, moderate to high damage output. It's going to be difficult to ignore. There's going to be a new mechanic with overheat, and there will be a new epic confrontation for Mandalore Bo. With the tips portion, they emphasize the import of stacking overheat to increase effects and to mod for health to compensate for the tenacity mechanic, which is something I might want to revisit in the future. Maybe there's larger mechanics with some other characters, but there's enough going on here that I don't think it is as clear cut that it should be health. Maybe Mandalore Bo will be the deciding factor that makes it a no-brainer. CG also teases Bo-Katan's kit a little bit. She will be interacting with true damage characters, so Paz and Bam, and there will be a new stacking locked buff for light side Mandalorians that increases defense and health, which will synergize very well with Paz, making him very tanky. And then Bo's Grand Arena Omicron is going to lift the full squad to a Galactic Legend counter status, which means for a player like me, she is going to be a major priority. Free-to-play players, like, this is the type of thing that you should be paying attention to. This is how you counter whales, counter GLs. You go after these less expensive characters a little bit faster so that you can have the types of counters to some of these strong teams that are otherwise very difficult to deal with. And for the kit reveal, with a character like Paz, as I went through this kit, this is one of those situations where we're going to start with the unique, because everything flows from here. So the unique ability is a legacy of House Vizsla. This is a Zeta and Omicron ability, and we're going to read this the way that we do here. We just simplify the text a little bit so we can help maximize our understanding here, because the way that this is written, it's a mess. At the battle start, Paz gains 10% defense and max health for each other Mando ally, that includes Darkseid, and an additional 15% defense and max health for each other light side Mando ally. So this is going to create a major incentive for a light side team, but there will still be synergy for a Maul team. That's going to be some interesting stuff to test until we see all of the characters that are going to be part of this Bo Mandalore epic confrontation, and we see what this full team is going to be. We'll be able to try out some things, see if it helps boost Maul, especially while we wait for Dark Trooper Moff Gideon to be released. There may be a team with Maul, Gar Saxon, Super Commando, Paz, and maybe Canderous or Jango. Whenever Paz gains taunt, he dispels it and gains 2 stacks of resilient defense, and while he has resilient defense, Paz has 10% crit avoidance and defense for each stack. And it's also worth noting that Bo-Katan lead has a granted taunt ability that is going to help maximize some of these mechanics. At each encounter start, if the leader ally is light side Mandalorian, Paz gains frenzy and 2 stacks of resilient defense, and that alone is enough to opt for Bo-Katan lead or light side Mandalorian lead over Maul. That is going to have a lot of power, especially as we get through the rest of this kit with how resilient defense is going to impact things. Also, the portion here where it says at each encounter, that also means that if you were to throw this team on defense and it gets some holds, every time your opponent makes an attempt, the Paz will be starting the encounter with frenzy. Also, that's going to impact territory battles as well. The next portion, whenever Paz loses a stack of resilient defense, he gains 1 stack of heat. That's why that light side ally becomes important. It means you get a little bit of a head start on having resilient defense. At 10 stacks of heat, abilities and effects that generate heat instead instead generate overheat. And this is the major mechanic here of how resilient defense ties into heat and how that ties into overheat. So more resilient defense means you're getting more stacks of heat, and the more stacks of heat you get, the faster that you are going to get into overheat. So starting out with Frenzy in addition to that, and probably with some modding with the entire squad, this means you are probably going to get Paz very high on both resilient defense and heat very early into the battle, so that we can start seeing the impacts of overheat and how that allows him to both be a tank and a offensive threat. And what heat does down here at the bottom, this is what I mean. CG puts this stuff in a weird order. I know why they do it, but it makes reading this stuff a little bit more cumbersome. Heat is plus 10% potency per stack, plus the effects that are granted by the abilities, and overheat is going to be plus 10% offense and minus 5% tenacity. Now, whenever he gains overheat, he's going to gain 10% turn meter, and then whenever he is inflicted with a debuff, he is going to gain 5% turn meter. So we will want to convert heat into overheat quickly, and as he gains overheat, he loses tenacity, which feeds his turn meter, especially up against debuff heavy squads. So choosing our counters is going to be pretty important, and with CG suggesting that the end game squad in Grand Arena is going to be able to counter a GL, that probably means Lord Vader is going to be the one who's going to be countered because he lands so many debuffs, which is going to be feeding so much turn meter with these mechanics. The first time Paz reaches 1% health, Paz is going to cleanse and recover 100% health, gains damage immunity, and then takes a bonus turn and then is defeated. All other light side Mando allies will recover 100% protection from there. And then during the bonus turn, cooldowns are going to be reset, and he has 100% offense, and heat and overheat stacks are maxed. And that all is doing is it's giving him a big finale as he goes out, which ties in very nicely to the end of Mando Season 3. And that should be a fun mechanic to see in action. The Omicron is a territory battle Omicron. At each encounter start, Paz gains 3 stacks of resilient defense. That we've already discussed with the unique ability, all the impacts of that. You get 2 with the unique, you get 3 here with the Ami. Whenever an enemy is revived, Paz is going to gain a bunch of additional effects, and this is important to understand because it's kind of sneaky powerful, because it means up against certain teams like Night Sisters or Geos or Mon Mothma, he's going to be particularly effective up against. So whenever an enemy is revived, Paz is going to gain 5 stacks of heat or overheat. All light side Mandalorian allies are going to recover 50% health and protection, going to gain 50% turn meter, and 3 stacks of resilient defense. So that seems like a very strong counter to some specific teams. For me, and honestly I think in general, kind of skippable. Depends how much you like territory battles. It's not for me. But I do think, and even for a territory battle Omicron, I think it's kind of mediocre, kind of not bad, but there's definitely better ones. And now we can get to the basic ability, Stalwart Barrage. Physical damage 3 times to the target. Gain 3 stacks of heat, maxing out at 10, or overheat, maxing out at 20. You gain heat first, and then after you have those 10 stacks of heat, then you start gaining stacks of overheat. With heat, you get bonus effects at 5 stacks of gaining 1 stack of resilient defense. With overheat, at 1 stack, you start dealing additional true damage to the target, which is unevadable, and that, remember, ties into Mandalore Bow. So this is why we started with the unique, because we needed to understand the implications of heat before getting into this. We will want to gain those 5 stacks of heat as quickly as possible so that we can feed this cycle, because with 5 stacks of heat, we get more resilient defense, and resilient defense will then convert into more heat. And then once we get those 10 stacks of heat, we start getting overheat, and this cycle builds where we start gaining potency with heat, and then we start gaining offense with overheat, along with losing the tenacity, which is going to feed into his turn meter when he's inflicted with debuffs. This is definitely a character that we are going to want fast so that we can help push along these kinds of mechanics. The first special ability, Ancestral Broadside. This is a 3-turn cooldown ability. AoE physical damage and inflict breach and crit damage down. Gain 5 stacks of heat or overheat and gain 1 stack of resilient defense. Considering the import of having 5 stacks of heat in order to have those cascading impacts, this feels like this is the first turn move. This ensures that the larger mechanics start working with resilient defense, with heat, with the stacking mechanics, and it will either ensure he gets to 5 stacks of heat once Frenzy is triggered, or if he was already able to build those 5 stacks of heat, it ensures that you convert into overheat quickly. The other mechanics here, Mandalorian allies are also going to recover protection equal to 10% of Paz's max protection, and that portion there is part of why I'm wondering if modding for health is the best way to go. There's plenty of other reasons to mod for health or defense. I'm just saying I don't think it's as clear as CG's tips were suggesting. Now there are also bonus effects on heat at 5+ stacks. Light side Mandalorian allies gain crit avoidance up, and at 10+ stacks AoE inflict daze. With overheat at 5+ stacks, it's going to be an AoE 15% turn meter removal. So other than those larger impacts of the heat mechanics, this ability is going to be offering a daze, a heal, and an AoE turn meter removal. So this ability has a lot of nice impacts. I just think that the heat mechanics are still going to outweigh some of the bonus effects that we're seeing here. But plus the bonus effects we don't see until a little later into the battle. These are not going to be immediately apparent. The second special, Vengeful Incineration. This is a 3-turn cooldown ability with a Zeta. AoE physical damage and inflict burning, and on the target inflict expose and stagger. Paz will also gain protection up and retribution, and this ability does 30% more damage for each stack of overheat that Paz has, and then it will remove all stacks of overheat. Now this ability is really nice, and I'm tempted to use this pretty early just for the retribution, because when you get retribution, then you're using the basic, which is going to give you more stacks of heat and resilient defense, and that will help you gain the overheat quickly. So using it early means getting 2 overheat and maxing out those mechanics, but then you're going to want to wait. You'll want to wait until you get closer to those max of 20 stacks of overheat so that you can get the maximal amount of damage here. But we'll have to play the character and just make sure that he has the survivability necessary so that you can afford to wait to use an ability like this. And when I'm delayed in putting these out by a day, it does have the side benefit of allowing us to break down the gear on the character. Now with Paz, he's not that bad. Gear 7's easy, it's a bunch of HoloLens, but that stuff's cheap. At Gear 8, it's a few carbs, a stun gun, a Chirotech. And then at Gear 9, this is a tough gear level. This is 2 more sets of Kairos and another stun gun, but after that it's kind of smooth sailing. At Gear 10, it's old gear heavy with another stun gun, thermal with a carb, but other than that it's fairly easy. At Gear 11, no more Kairos, we don't have to worry about any of that, and so we're looking at Comlink, 3 eyeballs, a stun gun, another carb. So this is a character, to get to Gear 12 is only 3 sets of Kairos. I think it's like 6 carbs and 3 stun guns. I did the math earlier, I can't remember off the top of my head. Gear 12, this is also not that bad. You got a fusion furnace, you have 2 fusion furnaces, but there are far worse characters, especially with tanks. Tanks are generally pretty intensive characters, and with this one, this is pretty manageable. Not too bad on the med packs, not too bad on the fusion furnaces. Oh, and I just realized I confused myself. There's only 1 fusion furnace. I was looking at the Mark 7. It's only 1 Mark 12 fusion furnace. And then the finishing Chirotech is the computer, which is the less in demand of the 2, which makes it a little bit easier to accumulate. You can buy it in larger quantities with Get 2. There's a number of things that make accumulating the Cairo computers a little bit more palatable. So all in all, this is a nice little easy one. And we wrap this one up here. We are going to still do the Dark Trooper Moff Gideon one. I just take a little bit longer on the Conquest ones because we get a little bit more time Plus, I'm busy with professional responsibilities. But what we do have are updated roster videos. Those are coming out and in some rapid succession because there's just been a lot that I've been doing within my roster. So thank you for watching. Be excellent to each other, everybody. This is Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.